Hello everyone, and welcome to my Bold and Beautiful Gossips 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Katie never imagined 6 words could feel like a physical blow, but the moment they left her mouth, "You did this to me." The room seemed to tilt, the air sucked out as if even the walls of Brooke's living room recoiled in shock. Brooke froze, utterly blindsided, her face draining of color as she stared at her sister like she was looking at a stranger. For a heartbeat, no one moved. The hum of the city outside suddenly felt too loud, too alive, intruding on a moment that had cracked something open between 2 women who had spent a lifetime defending each other. Katie's hands were shaking, her chest rising and falling in shallow, furious breaths, the kind that come when pain has been swallowed for far too long and finally demands to be heard. She hadn't planned to say it. Not like this, not so raw, but once it was out there was no pulling it back. Years of resentment, of quiet compromises, of smiling through betrayal, all surged forward at once, and Brooke could see it in her eyes. This wasn't about one mistake. This was about everything. Brooke tried to speak, instinctively reaching for the calm, rational tone she always used when things went wrong, but Katie cut her off with a sharp laugh that held no humor at all. "Don't!" Katie snapped, her voice breaking even as she tried to sound strong. "Don't you dare look at me like you don't know what I'm talking about." Brooke's mouth fell open, confusion battling with guilt she didn't even fully understand yet. She took a step closer, but Katie backed away, as if Brooke's nearness burned. "I trusted you," Katie continued, every word trembling with emotion. "I trusted you with my heart, my family, my life, and you took it. You took it like it was yours to use." Brooke shook her head, tears already welling up, insisting she never meant to hurt her, that things had gotten complicated, that she never thought it would spiral this far. But Katie wasn't listening anymore. She'd spent too many nights awake replaying moments she should have questioned, conversations she should have pushed harder on, signs she ignored because she wanted to believe her sister would never cross that line again. The truth, as ugly and painful as it was, sat between them like a loaded weapon. Brooke had once again found herself entangled in something that didn't belong to her. Emotions she should have walked away from, boundaries she should have respected. And Katie, who had rebuilt her life piece by fragile piece after heartbreak, suddenly felt like she was standing in the ruins all over again. Her voice softened, which somehow made it worse. "Do you have any idea what it's like," she asked quietly, "to finally feel safe, and then realize the person who broke you is the same one who was supposed to protect you?" Brooke's tears spilled over, streaking down her cheeks as she whispered Katie's name, begging her to understand that it wasn't intentional, that love doesn't always follow rules. But that was the problem. Brooke's version of love always seemed to come at someone else's expense. As the confrontation deepened, old wounds resurfaced, dragged into the light where they could no longer be ignored. Katie reminded Brooke of every time she had been asked to step aside, to be the reasonable one, to forgive and move on because that's just how Brooke is. She spoke of feeling invisible in her own pain, of always being expected to absorb the fallout while Brooke picked up the pieces and carried on. "You always survive," Katie said bitterly. "You always get another chance. But what about the rest of us?" Brooke tried to argue that she had suffered too, that she had lost love, lost trust, lost parts of herself along the way. But Katie shook her head. "You lose things," she said. "I lose myself." The intensity of the moment drew others in, Donna hovering anxiously near the doorway, torn between her sisters, and even Ridge, who arrived too late to stop the explosion but just in time to witness its aftermath. His presence only made things worse. Katie glanced at him, then back at Brooke, her expression hardening. "This is exactly it," she said. "Every time. It's always the same people, the same patterns. And somehow I'm the one left bleeding." Ridge tried to step in to play peacemaker, but Katie wasn't having it. She wasn't there for apologies or explanations anymore. She was there to reclaim something she had lost. Her voice. Brooke finally broke down completely, admitting that she hadn't realized how deeply her actions had cut, that she had been so caught up in her own confusion she never stopped to consider the collateral damage. "I love you," she sobbed. "You're my sister." Katie's eyes filled with tears again, but this time they fell silently, grief replacing rage. "Love isn't supposed to feel like this," she replied. "Love doesn't leave scars you have to explain to your child." That line hit Brooke like a punch to the gut, the weight of it sinking in as she thought about Will, about the example being set, about the generational cycle of hurt repeating itself. By the time Katie turned to leave, the room felt hollow, like something essential had been stripped away. She paused at the door, not looking back. "I hope someday you understand what you took from me," she said softly. "Because right now, I don't think you even see it." The door closed behind her with a quiet finality that echoed louder than any scream. Brooke collapsed onto the couch, shaking. Her world suddenly fractured in a way she couldn't fix with apologies or promises. For the first time, she was forced to confront the possibility that this time, forgiveness might not come. In the days that followed, the fallout rippled through every corner of their lives. Katie withdrew, focusing on her work, on being present for her son, trying to rebuild her sense of self without leaning on the people who had hurt her most. Brooke spiraled inward, haunted by Katie's words, replaying that moment over and over, realizing that intent didn't erase impact. Even Ridge, who had always believed time could heal anything, began to question whether some wounds ran too deep. The sisters who once stood united against the world now existed on opposite sides of a chasm filled with regret, anger, and unspoken truths. And yet, beneath all the pain, there was something else, an uncomfortable, fragile possibility that this confrontation, as devastating as it was, might finally force real change. Not the kind patched together with excuses, but the kind born from accountability. Whether Brooke was capable of that change remained to be seen. What was certain, though, was that Katie's 6 words had shattered the illusion that everything could simply go back to normal. Nothing would ever be the same again, and for the first time that might be exactly what needed to happen. The silence Katie left behind was unbearable. It pressed in on Brooke from every direction, thick and suffocating, like the house itself was judging her. She sat there long after the door closed, her hands clenched together so tightly her knuckles ached, staring at the spot where her sister had stood only moments before. 6 words. Just 6. And yet they echoed louder than any scream Brooke had ever heard in her life. "You did this to me. Not you hurt me. Not you made a mistake. But you did this." Deliberate. Final. Accusatory in a way that stripped Brooke of every excuse she'd ever leaned on. She had spent years telling herself that things happened to her, that love found her, that chaos followed her, that circumstances pulled her into impossible situations. But Katie's words refused to let her hide behind that narrative anymore. They demanded ownership. And Brooke had no idea how to carry that weight. Donna lingered awkwardly in the doorway, unsure whether to step forward or give Brooke space. She had seen countless Logan family blow-ups over the years, but this one felt different. There was no shouting match that burned itself out, no dramatic reconciliation waiting just around the corner. This felt fractured. "Brooke," Donna said gently, her voice barely above a whisper. "You need to breathe." Brooke laughed weakly, a hollow sound that startled even her. "I don't think I remember how," she replied. Donna crossed the room and sat beside her sister, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. Brooke leaned into her, finally allowing herself to shake, the tears coming harder now, her composure completely gone. "I didn't think it would go this far," she sobbed. "I didn't think she'd look at me like that." Donna swallowed, choosing her words carefully. "Maybe," she said softly. "She's been wanting to say that for a long time." Elsewhere, Katie drove with no clear destination in mind, her hands gripping the steering wheel as if it were the only thing anchoring her to the present. Her chest still burned, her throat raw from holding back tears she refused to shed. Not yet. She had cried enough over Brooke in her lifetime. What scared her most wasn't the anger. It was the strange sense of clarity that followed it. Saying those words had hurt, but it had also felt honest. Necessary. For years she had bent herself into someone smaller, quieter, more forgiving than she really was, all in the name of family harmony. And where had that left her? Standing in Brooke's living room, begging to be seen. No more. By the time she pulled into her driveway, Katie had made a silent promise to herself. This time, she wasn't going to chase forgiveness. She was going to protect her peace. The next morning, the tension was impossible to ignore at Forrester Creations. Whispers followed Brooke down the hallway. Glances lingered a second too long. News traveled fast in that building, especially when it involved the Logans. Brooke kept her head down, trying to lose herself in work, but every fabric sample, every design meeting felt meaningless. Her phone buzzed constantly, missed calls from Ridge, texts from Donna, but the one name that never appeared was the only one that mattered. Katie. Across the office, Katie was all business, calm to the point of cold, her professionalism acting as armor. She avoided Brooke entirely, slipping into meetings early, leaving late, refusing to be cornered. When they finally crossed paths by chance near the elevator, the air between them crackled with unspoken tension. Brooke opened her mouth to speak, but Katie didn't slow down, didn't even look at her. That quiet dismissal hurt more than any insult could have. Ridge watched it all unfold with growing unease. He had been part of enough Logan sister wars to know when to intervene and when to stay out of it, but this time he couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted. When he finally confronted Brooke in her office, his tone was gentle but firm. "What did you do?" he asked. Brooke bristled at first, then deflated. "Why does everyone assume I did something?" she snapped before immediately regretting it. Ridge raised an eyebrow. "Because Katie doesn't explode like that unless she's been pushed," he replied. Brooke sank into her chair, rubbing her temples. "I didn't mean to hurt her," she said, her voice cracking. Ridge sighed. "That's not an answer, Brooke." And that was the problem. Intent no longer mattered. Impact did. Katie, meanwhile, found herself grappling with emotions she hadn't expected. Anger, yes. Sadness, definitely. But also guilt. She hated that part of herself, the one that still worried about Brooke's feelings even after everything. She hated that she could picture Brooke crying and feel that familiar tug to comfort her. When Will asked why Aunt Brooke hadn't come by lately, Katie's heart twisted. She forced a smile, telling him adults sometimes need space, silently vowing not to let history repeat itself through her son. She refused to teach him that love meant enduring pain in silence. That lesson had already cost her too much. Days turned into a week, and the rift only widened. Donna tried to play mediator, shuttling between her sisters with carefully worded messages, but Katie shut that down quickly. "Please don't," she told her gently. "I'm not ready." Brooke, on the other hand, grew increasingly desperate. She drafted apology texts she never sent, rehearsed speeches in the mirror that fell apart the moment she imagined Katie's reaction. For the first time, Brooke realized she might not get the chance to explain herself, and that terrified her. Brooke Logan had always believed in second chances, especially her own. But what if this time the door stayed closed? The breaking point came during a company event, one Katie couldn't avoid and Brooke couldn't skip. The tension was palpable as they stood on opposite sides of the room, surrounded by laughter and champagne that felt grotesquely out of place. When Katie took the stage to speak, her confidence stunned everyone, including Brooke. She spoke about growth, integrity, and accountability, her words layered with meaning that only Brooke fully understood. Each sentence felt like a mirror held up to Brooke's past. By the time Katie finished, the applause was thunderous. Brooke clapped too, tears burning her eyes, realizing something painful and undeniable. Katie didn't need her approval anymore. Later that night, Brooke finally found the courage to approach her sister. Not with excuses, not with justifications, just truth. "I see it now," she said quietly. Katie turned, wary but listening. "I see what I did," Brooke continued. "And I'm so sorry it took losing you for me to understand." Katie studied her for a long moment, her expression unreadable. "I didn't want to lose you," she replied softly. "I wanted you to see me." Brooke nodded, tears slipping free. "I do," she whispered. "I really do." It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was something. Crack in the wall. Possibility. As they parted that night, both women knew the road ahead would be long and uncertain. Some wounds don't heal quickly. Some scars never fade completely. But for the first time, the truth had been spoken. Raw, painful, unavoidable. And sometimes that's the only place real healing can begin. Whether the Logan sisters could find their way back to each other remained an open question. But one thing was clear. The days of pretending everything was fine were over. And in their place stood two women finally facing the consequences of love, loyalty, and the damage left behind when boundaries are crossed. The fragile moment of honesty Brooke and Katie shared at the event didn't bring peace the way Brooke secretly hoped it would. If anything, it unsettled her more. For years, Brooke had relied on dramatic confrontations to clear the air. Tears, apologies, a heartfelt embrace, and then life moved on. This time was different. Katie hadn't softened. She hadn't forgiven. She hadn't even promised to try. She had simply acknowledged Brooke's words and walked away again, calm and composed, as if she were finally choosing herself over family tradition. That quiet strength haunted Brooke more than anger ever could. The next few weeks forced everyone to pick sides, even if no one wanted to admit it. At Forrester Creations, Katie's authority grew sharper, her voice more decisive in meetings. People noticed. They listened. She no longer deferred to Brooke's opinions out of habit or loyalty. When Brooke proposed an idea during a creative review, Katie didn't automatically support it the way she always had. She questioned it. Professionally, publicly, Brooke felt each moment like a tiny cut, not because Katie was wrong, but because she was no longer protected by Sisterhood. For the first time in a very long time, Brooke Logan was being treated like everyone else, and she wasn't sure she liked how exposed that made her feel. Ridge, caught in the middle, tried to convince himself the tension would fade, but he could feel the fracture spreading. Logan family dinners stopped happening. Invitations became awkward, then non-existent. When he asked Brooke why she hadn't reached out again, she snapped that she didn't know how. "Everything I say sounds like an excuse," she admitted bitterly. "And everything I don't say feels like abandonment." Ridge watched her struggle with something unfamiliar. Restraint. Brooke had always been impulsive, emotional, driven by her heart. Now she was frozen, terrified that one wrong move would permanently destroy what little connection she had left with her sister. Katie, on the other hand, found herself rediscovering parts of herself she'd long buried. Without Brooke dominating her emotional landscape, Katie's world felt quieter, less dramatic, but steadier. She poured herself into work, into motherhood, into friendships she'd neglected while constantly managing family crises. She even caught herself laughing more freely, without that underlying tension she'd grown accustomed to. It was unsettling and empowering all at once. For the first time, Katie wasn't reacting to Brooke. She was simply living. But healing, she soon realized, wasn't linear. One afternoon, while cleaning out old files at home, Katie stumbled across a photo album she hadn't seen in years. Logan family memories spilled out onto the floor. Holidays, weddings, heartbreaks captured in glossy snapshots. There they were. Brooke radiant in the center, Katie smiling beside her, always slightly in the background. The realization hit her like a punch. She had spent so much of her life orbiting Brooke's chaos that she'd forgotten she was allowed to take up space. Sitting on the floor, photo in hand, Katie finally let herself cry, not for what Brooke had done recently, but for the years she had lost trying to be the good sister. Meanwhile, Donna struggled more than anyone expected. Being the peacemaker had always been her role, and without it, she felt unmoored. She loved both of her sisters fiercely, but she couldn't ignore the truth anymore. Brooke had crossed a line. Again. And this time, Katie wasn't willing to pretend otherwise. When Donna gently suggested to Brooke that she might need to accept the consequences of her actions, Brooke bristled. "So now you're against me too?" she asked, wounded. Donna shook her head. "I'm not against you," she said softly. "I'm just done pretending this didn't hurt her." That conversation lingered with Brooke long after Donna left, forcing her to confront something deeply uncomfortable. She was losing her safety net. The real turning point came unexpectedly, during a crisis that had nothing to do with romance, betrayal, or love triangles. A major business decision at Forrester threatened to divide the company, and Katie found herself leading the charge to protect employees and designers who could be affected. Brooke, watching from the sidelines, saw a version of her sister she had underestimated for years. Katie wasn't emotional. She wasn't reactive. She was decisive, compassionate, and fearless. And for the first time, Brooke realized something painful. Katie didn't need her anymore. Not emotionally, not professionally. That realization cracked something open inside Brooke, forcing her to question who she was without the people she'd always leaned on. Late one night, Brooke sat alone in her living room, staring at her phone. She finally typed out a message. Not an apology, not a plea, but an acknowledgement. "I'm starting to understand that loving you means respecting your boundaries, even when it hurts me. I don't know how to be better yet, but I'm trying." She stared at the words for a long time before hitting send. Then she set the phone down and waited, resisting every urge to follow up, explain, or justify. It was the hardest thing she'd ever done. Katie read the message hours later, her heart tightening despite herself. It wasn't perfect. It didn't fix anything. But it felt different. Honest. Still, she didn't respond right away. For once, she allowed herself the luxury of time. Healing didn't need to happen on Brooke's schedule anymore. She went to bed that night feeling strangely at peace, knowing that whatever happened next would be on her terms. The shift didn't go unnoticed. Rich commented one day that Brooke seemed quieter, more reflective, less impulsive. Brooke didn't deny it. "I'm learning what it's like to sit with discomfort," she admitted. "I don't recommend it." Rich smiled faintly but said nothing. He could see that this was a reckoning Brooke needed, one no amount of romantic drama could replace. Whether it would make her stronger or break her remained to be seen. Weeks later, a small but significant moment occurred. At a family gathering neither sister could avoid, Katie and Brooke found themselves alone in the kitchen. No audience. No pressure. Just silence. Brooke didn't rush to fill it. Katie noticed. That alone spoke volumes. After a long pause, Katie finally said, "I'm not ready to forgive you." Brooke nodded, swallowing hard. "I know." Katie studied her carefully. "But I see that you're trying not to make this about you." Brooke met her gaze, eyes steady. "I'm trying to make it about what I took from you." Katie exhaled, the tension in her shoulders easing slightly. It wasn't reconciliation, but it was respect. And that mattered more than either of them wanted to admit. As the night went on, the Logan sisters remained cautiously distant, but the hostility was gone. In its place was something unfamiliar and fragile. Accountability. For Brooke, it was a steep learning curve. For Katie, it was liberation. The 6 words that once exploded from her chest had changed everything. Not because they destroyed her relationship with Brooke, but because they forced it to evolve into something real. The future remained uncertain. Old habits die hard and trust takes time to rebuild. But one truth stood firm now, unshakable and earned. Katie Logan would never again shrink herself to make someone else comfortable. And Brooke Logan, for the first time, was being forced to love her sister without consuming her. Whether that lesson would last was a question only time could answer. But the damage had been done, the truth spoken, and the illusion shattered forever.